So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Protecting Utilities with Government-Grade Security. My name's Tony Mannion, and I'm the Sales Development Manager at Solutions PT, and I'm being joined today by Mazar Hussain, our Infrastructure Business Manager, Lee Carter, our Cybersecurity Product Manager, and Baldeep Dogra, Director of Product Marketing at Blackberry. So during the webinar, we will be muting all microphones, but any questions that you do have, please either put in the chat box or in the question and answer box, and I'll monitor that as we go through the webinar. I know we've already had a question come through about air-gap environments, so we will cover that during the webinar. If not, I will remind the participants as we get to the end. So I guess one of the reasons that we put this webinar together was we have been doing a lot of work with utility companies recently on their cybersecurity journey. Now, it's probably not that unusual because government regulation is certainly a big driver. But even with the requirement to be compliant, I guess we're seeing other factors that are helping people decide how they should go, what they should protect, how they should protect it. So what I wanted to start off with was perhaps just ask Maz, who I know, Maz, you've been speaking to a lot of particularly water and wastewater companies recently, but utilities in general. And I thought it'd be a good idea to see some of the topics that you've been talking about and if there's a commonality that would perhaps increase the need for cybersecurity.
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Tony. And if it's okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see my slides? Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, Tony, thank you very much for that introduction. So as Business Unit Manager for Infrastructure, one of my roles is to understand from talking to our clients in the utility sector and the infrastructure sector, transport, airports, utilities, as to what the trends and what the challenges are that are driving and shaping their organization. And today's reality is that many of the most critical operations in infrastructure are serviced by multiple systems that are completely disparate to each other. So as a result, it's not uncommon for a control room operator or a maintenance engineer or an automation professional to have to master multiple different systems, multiple user interfaces, simply in order to fulfill the role. But in recent years, this has started to change, and organizations have realized that ripping and replacing these existing systems, whether they're SCADA or telemetry or GIS or asset management or whatever they may be, is not only costly, but also inadvisable, unless, of course, those systems are at the end of their support cycle and are not working as intended. It's inadvisable because no one organization, as good as they might be or claim to be, have all the answers when it comes to the full range of systems that reside within a large infrastructure customer's operational technology space. And it's also inadvisable because many of these systems are doing a perfectly good job in their own right. So I know a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but the trend has actually been around unifying these different systems, including the unification of the data and the visualization aspects of these systems in a way that allows the utilities to make informed decisions quickly. In other words, bringing siloed information out of the silos and into the enterprise. But this really gives rise to a different issue, one where opening up the silos also opens up the possibility of cyber threats. But before we go into that, just to sort of illustrate the wealth of data that currently sits in these countless silos. So within a typical utility, many organizations might have started with these types of core systems, such as SCADA, operational control systems, mapping systems, CCTV, reports, documents, access control, all of this type of stuff. in order to fulfill their core operational needs. But as things progress and as utilities sort of get more mature, these expand, and they've ended up with all of these systems today, potentially far more than that. Given the proliferation of digital technologies, this is probably a little bit on the conservative side. So each of those subsystems represents an area of data that exists within the customer's enterprise. And so what is the answer? The answer is around unifying operations by giving all stakeholders a 360-degree view of their assets and their operations, and bringing people and processes together using technology. And this is what large companies are doing today. This is what infrastructure companies are doing right now. They are democratizing the decision-making process. They're empowering the whole team with a centralized view to make informed decisions, and using water, wastewater as an example. Here we're helping utilities implement role-based systems versus the more traditional function-based systems by reducing the need for extra training for operators across, and bringing multiple user interfaces in one place and multiple data sets in one place. And we're also bringing operational context to assets from these types of subsystems on the left-hand side. So the common theme to all of this is data. Customers are having to open up their data silos in order to solve the big challenge. And I guess, the big question really is, how do these customers ensure that they're not compromised from a cybersecurity perspective? So I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, perhaps to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Thanks, Maz. That was really interesting, and I guess for a long while we've been talking about data silos and the benefits that customers start to see from bringing this information together, having contextualized information for decision making. But you're right. How do we do that in a safe way? And if we are opening up connections between networks, how do we protect that? Lee, I suppose I've certainly had similar conversations. I'm sure you've had similar conversations with customers, perhaps not in utilities, but elsewhere. Things like digitization, about bringing your process data up into the corporate system. Are these the sorts of things that you're seeing from elsewhere?
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, we are certainly seeing an increase in interaction from a number of different sectors. Some which are NIST regulators, like utilities, power, etc., and others who aren't. What we actually find, there's a number of customers taking a detailed view on their aspects of the business process. They're looking at their overall approach to OT cybersecurity, and that all fits in with part of their total digital journey. One customer that I've recently been consulting with, they had a number of point projects that they were currently running. We undertook an audit with them for IC 60443, and they very, very quickly realised that the choice is just a little bit more than just replacing some of the edge technology. And what they wanted to then go ahead and do is refocus their approach based on evidence. We're certainly seeing, like Maz is saying, an increase in number of customers who are trying to take data out of the cloud and take that into the enterprise. But that also includes things like security information from remote access solutions, network monitoring, endpoints, and bringing all those into centralized areas, like SOCs and SIEMs. Secure remote access is definitely playing a large part with our customers, as well as industrial network threat detection. I'm currently working with customers in all sorts of sectors for that at the moment. Change management and business continuity, disaster recovery. That's a very, very hot topic at the moment, and especially with the increase in ransomware attacks. And we often find a lot of this is actually brought in by customers who've just got out-of-date endpoint protection. which kind of brings me on to my next point, which is we're seeing an increased interest in effective endpoint protection. Difficulty is with OT. Some organisations decide they want to use the built-in with the operating system, then realise that that doesn't work, and some third-party products are a little bit heavy to actually manage. There's a big management overhead there. Sadly, I still see customers with no endpoint protection at all, or some of the ones that do have it, signatures are months, years out of date. And lastly, I'm seeing an interest in application whitelisting and removable media. We're finding a number of customers who are finding that's really important to them, especially if they've got legacy systems or standalone or DCS. It's a really simplistic solution for them. But coming back to this, some of the core drivers for my customers, they are purely cybersecurity related, but a lot of them have got the roots into attributing data sharing, and it ties back to what Maz was saying. Data in silos. This needs to be aggregated and brought into a central point.
Thanks, Lee. And I guess that's probably a different view than I would have expected a couple of years ago, where we're perhaps now seeing customers who are deploying cyber strategies rather than just seeing a point solution as sometimes a nice to have, and sometimes it's removed from a project because of expense. So actually taking that step upwards really does help a customer to add levels of protection that we know is what's required for cybersecurity. So, Baldi, we talk even in the title of this webinar about government protection, and I know that Blackberry work with all of the G7 governments, 18 of the G20 governments, so you've certainly got the government angle covered. And I know there's a lot of new innovation that's come out of Blackberry. You protect something like, is it 240 million cars on the roads? You're deployed in the space station. It's really exciting stuff. But it'd be really good to maybe hear a little bit in this webinar about how you're using those technologies to deliver capabilities to our utility customers.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the intro, Tony, and thanks for having me here today. And yeah, you make some very valid points, and I wanted to take this opportunity to give you an idea of what our unique prevent first approach is to cybersecurity. What does it mean to endpoints, whether it's a phone, a car, or even the space station? And I've got some slides to help everyone understand what does all this mean for utilities. And what I want to do is try and apply that into one aspect of what we do, which is critical event management, and which is very key to physical systems as well as cybersecurity systems, as I'll run through in a bit. So with that, very kind of straightforward agenda. I'm going to go through a little bit of an overview of the company. I think every presentation we do now, we've got to give an update of what Blackberry actually do. There are people out there who still think we make phones, which is incredible. But we're a completely different company now. I want to put some trends into context. Then I want to talk about how we approach cybersecurity from a data standpoint and how we approach cybersecurity from a physical standpoint. Mainly kind of introduction, because I really don't have hours to go through that today, but you'll get an intro to that. And I want to kind of finish off with Industry 4.0. What does it mean to Blackberry? How can we actually help there? And that's something we're investigating right now, but we've got some interesting points to make, particularly when it comes to data. Right, but before that, you'll hear about the word convergence, the IT-OT convergence that's leading Industry 4.0, for example. We're seeing the same thing, right? We're seeing the convergence of IT, OT, and IoT. And at Blackberry, we're seeing this convergence across almost every industry. And on this slide, you can see that, from supply chains to anywhere operations, which is, people want to work from wherever they want now. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Hyper automation, you want things to run by themselves, but you want to make sure you track and influence whatever decisions are being made through technology. Then there's the other side, which is, well, we want to be smart everywhere. We want smart cities, we want smart cars, we want smart trains, we want shipping containers that go by themselves and all that kind of stuff. But there's also the future as well, and you see right at the bottom right, quantum cryptography. So quantum computing is going to be the next kind of exciting thing in computing, but also the next most dangerous thing. You know, imagine doing things quickly. You can also undo them very quickly with quantum. We've already got solutions for quantum cryptography to protect data from a kind of from a identity perspective. So you can imagine sensors that have QNX, which is our software for IoT, built into sensors. You can cryptographically separate the data you want to based on the ECC keys that we have available for those sensors. So we've got that available already. It's ready for that next world. Moving on. So how do we at Blackberry, have we shaped ourselves to meet those challenges? I need to emphasize the structure of our organization. We're basically split in two. We serve two different markets. We serve the cybersecurity market and IoT, but there is that blend in the middle. And it's that kind of coming together, that convergence, which I showed you in the previous slide, which our CTO department, our CTO team, CTO office are working on as well. And I'm kind of assisting from a product marketing perspective as well. So there is that overlap. But right now we're focusing on increasing our cybersecurity presence for endpoints, unifying the endpoints, unifying management as well. So UEM is something we've done for a long time. And also secure communications, and of course critical event management, which is one thing I want to focus on today. And then IoT, like Tony mentioned, we're in the space station, nuclear power stations as well, with the secure embedded OS and lots of other things like weapons, which I don't want to talk about. But QNX is very reliable. It's very small. It can be fit onto tiny sensors. It's only got 150,000 lines of code. And also things like asset tracking as well. But all of this feeds into what we call a data lake. And I want to talk about this later on. There is some relevance to what the data lake concept is and what Mazar mentioned earlier on about where does this data go to? It needs to go somewhere. And then we have secure development platforms. We've got open APIs to help develop solutions on all of that data and to make it work. I just want to quickly summarize some of these trends we're seeing today. We're seeing a shifting work environment. I mean, the pandemic, one hangover of the pandemic is what we call hybrid working. And this hybrid work environment, you know, you might have it. We certainly will have it at Blackberry. Currently, we're not going back to the office yet, but we will do, and it will be kind of hybrid. But we're seeing this everywhere. There are new working practices. We're still seeing risks from insecure home networks. Cyber threats to people's personal devices or home networks, or to organizations in general, increased 300% when the pandemic started. That's because of insecure networks, BYOD devices at home, because now you have to use your home desktop, for example. So the risks that were there before the pandemic have been amplified. And there's also risk to the enterprise because systems aren't being updated regularly, and also, as I mentioned before, BYOD. There's also the insider threat. Now, insider threats are very important. A lot of people don't realize that humans do make mistakes, and those mistakes could be costly. You know, you could share data with people you're not supposed to. You could be using Facebook to send something, or WhatsApp to send data to somebody, you know, before you realize that data is being sniffed somewhere and is picked up in Russia or something. So you just got to be careful of your users and educate them on how to have cyber hygiene. Then we're seeing changes in OT. Where we're seeing this shift, this IT-OT shift, is around aging infrastructure. And this isn't just IT infrastructure, this is aging OT infrastructure. We're seeing the convergence and the part that plays in terms of this the kind of this shift in cyber to physical systems. There are new devices, the increase in insider threats, and lack of what we call trust. Now, you don't just have to put trust in humans or the endpoints they're using, but also the machines that are connecting to your network. right? It's as simple as that, because those machines have data ultimately. So you've got to keep them safe. And the next bit, the risk to financial stability, is something I want to go through on the next slide, right? Geopolitical tensions, increasing regulations, and the impact of critical systems. Now we're familiar with the regulations out there and the need and impact on innovation, for example. But IEC 62443, something Lee mentioned earlier, how does that impact OT systems, and what part will Blackberry play, right? And definitely when it comes to risk, because it focuses on risk, that's where we come in, and we will tend to look at cyber attacks, not just from an economic perspective, but also critical infrastructure. And that's what we're going to go through in a minute. I found this on the web. It was, what will the consequences of a cyber attack be to critical infrastructure? And also came across this quote from Liv Garfield this morning, actually. We're doing more innovation at Severn Trent Water, but we want to do more AI. And that really kind of got me thinking around, right, how can AI support water companies better, and what part can AI play in general? But I think to understand that better is to understand what AI is, and I want to present that in the way Blackberry does it, so that we can start thinking about, right, how would that then apply to IT systems inside your organizations, but also how can you then look at OT, for example, and critical infrastructure. Looking at that would be one part of our cybersecurity to look at. First, let's talk a little bit more about risk. You're probably familiar with these cyber attacks. There are about 250 million ransomware attacks alone. And this can be anybody in an organization. Yes, it comes in through IT infrastructure, but that can impact OT. And I'll give an example. You probably remember DarkSide. It closed down the Colonial pipeline for over a week. And there's a crossover from IT here. So there was an impact. Because of that attack, there was an impact to supplying aviation fuel and fuel for cars for 7 to 10 days. Now, the CEO agreed on paying this ransom, I think $4.4 million, but the cost in lost operations were 10 times that amount, maybe more. So you can just imagine that what a ransomware attack can do to any organization, regardless who you are. I think it was the Kaseya attack that closed down co-op shops in the Nordics, because it took down their stock inventory software. That can happen again. That can happen to anybody. So it's any vertical, any sector. So any company have these risk concerns, and it kind of flows from one end of the organization to the other. Users are asking themselves, have I been breached? IT is thinking, our current endpoints protection is reactive. The attack surface is growing because now you've got other systems to think about and other endpoints as well. The folks at board level are thinking, right, what's this going to do to our public image, and what's the cost going to be? But then there's also this concern of, and I mentioned it before, around hybrid working. People are taking this IP home, right? And that also presents another level of risk. And then there's the kind of ever increasing concern around security teams being understaffed. There is not enough cyber knowledge out there in the market. So what I wanted to do then is to look at, right, what are the events that trigger the execution of a response plan, right? So there's been a shift in the nature of events, as well as being a shift to the way people work. And, the pandemic has something to do with that. You can see here that the top triggers are disease outbreak, funny enough, COVID. But 3 of them are IT related. And those are new in this list. And this was based on the Horizon report that was released recently. Weather has been taught for years in this report, but it's actually fallen down, and IT has actually taken over. And that's because of the pandemic, right? And it just shows you that the shift to the remote workforce and what it's doing. IT use cases have become more prevalent with home workers, but then You know, have a look at critical infrastructure failure. That's increased. That's new. There's been more and more impact to critical infrastructure. I mean, today you'll see that, you know, ships can't get to their ports, right? So the plumbing of global trade is, you know, there's something happening, right? And you've got to be prepared, whoever you are. So critical event management plays a key part in this, in understanding the shift in nature of those events. And that falls under the Blackberry cybersecurity division, which I'm going to go through a little bit now. So our cybersecurity is key to what we do. It's a prevent first approach to protecting organizations, protecting their data, and protecting their people. This prevent first approach is key to dealing with those threats I mentioned earlier on. And let's go back about 30 years. Showing my age now. A human would write a virus, and then another human would write an antivirus to fix the problem that that virus caused. And that's a human reaction, a human response to a human problem. But that response would be typically in days or weeks. But then, attacks got more and more sophisticated, so the responses had to get more sophisticated. And you'd see things like anti-exploitation, sandboxing solutions were released, isolation, things to isolate these viruses, just put away. You started to see that in the kind of, late noughties, early 2000s. But then EDR kind of came in to kind of be the kind of saving grace for that. That was what you could call the first revolution in dealing with threats. But EDR was still a response, and because it was still responsive, it took seconds. It brought down the days and the weeks response to seconds, but it was still humans doing an analysis, responding, and done, right? So it's quite obvious that if something happened, if a breach happened, it can be stopped, but it can be stopped in seconds. So you'll hear a competitor of ours say, "We stop breaches." The breach has happened, right? And lateral movement could mean that that breach could cause other issues, and somebody's behind the firewall, they can do anything they want. But you can detect and then analyze, respond, stop, and then get rid of it. So it's obvious that this semi-automated approach would need to be dealt with. You need something that's not reactive, and not take humans out of the equation, but take the human response time out of the equation. Right? I've been accused of saying take the humans out of the equation before, so I wanted to emphasize you're not taking humans out, just that response time. And to do that, you need AI. We had two guys, Lee McAfee, Stuart McClure, and Ryan Perma, and they started a company called Cylance, and they created this AI. They hired all the best brains from NASA and from Google, from other organizations, from people that were top of their game. We had a joke once that Cylance was nothing but a company of PhDs once upon a time. They really were. So they created this new AI about 10 years ago, and it started to learn about 9 years ago. And by 2015, it had learned 0.5 billion files. The machine learning was a math model, and it allowed it to learn and AI to just mature so that it would be preventive. And that's the way we took the kind of human response time out of the equation. And by 2015, it knew about 99% of the threats out there, which is already really high. At the moment, it's in its 8th generation, and it knows 99.99% of threats out there. And we call that, the basis of having sustainable threat prevention. It's a key word here. So I don't want to spend too long on this because I could spend hours, but in order to stay ahead, you've got to you have to prevent. I mean, this is the AI. It's in its 8th generation. Whoops. No other AI ML is that mature, and we called it a revolution. It is a revolution. Some people have said, don't use the word revolution, it means people dying. No, not really, it doesn't. It means, in philosophical terms, it means a change in the way you deal with a paradigm, right? So the objective for AI/ML is for this model is machine learning. You do get other models, algorithms that kind of look at patterns, but this is machine learning. This is pure AI. That means it's only as good as how much it's learned and over what period of time. And what it does is, well, essentially replacing traditional methods of threat protection, which use signatures. Those signatures are kept in the database, and it's very, very resource intensive on machines, and it takes a lot of power. Whereas this is just a single agent. You don't need to do those. You don't need to have new signatures made. It doesn't need to update them all the time. It's always running, and it's economical. And because it's learning all the time, the agent just gets smarter and smarter and smarter over the years. And to do that, we track a large set of worldwide threat actors using ML and AI indicators. And we collect this data through deeply analyzing the files. And then for every threat assessed, we identify and build models to identify not just their advanced preventive threat tool sets, but also the tactics that they're leveraging, advanced persistent threat. So it's a trained math model, and currently it's read almost 1.5 trillion files. And that learning that we've got, we give those learning clusters data that's been classified and identified. We give them labels, and based on the features, and that expands and expands and expands. And then we compare it what we've already seen in the universe, and it's learned, it's picked, and and one good thing there is it anonymizes data, and only the math model knows how to unpack that data, right? So there's no PII, and I think I heard before, it does work in an air-gapped environment, because that agent just sits on your endpoint. It will do what it needs to, and it just wouldn't make sense if if you're working and you go offline and something's been downloaded to your phone. It just wouldn't make sense if nothing could actually pick that up, so it can pick it up offline. There's no reliance on going elsewhere and off device to do anything. So it's effective prediction, and it's ready for 0 day. So, sorry, just moving my slide. So it's all about staying ahead, and I just wanted to give an example of what that means in practice, and we call that temporal predictive advantage. So I mentioned before, so this is the ability to predict and prevent attacks before they happen. I mentioned before that our AI picked up 0.5, well, learned from 0.5 billion files in 2015. It could have stopped the aforementioned ransomware attack by DarkSide on Colonial pipeline in 2015, 67 months ago. And there was recently a Conti ransomware which affected a health services provider. It's about the same time. Accenture got hit by the Lockbit ransomware as well. And that could have been stopped 68 months ago. So you get an idea of all of these key players, and they are developing things all the time. You'll probably remember WannaCry and what that did to our NHS. If the NHS was running our AI, that would never have happened, even at that time. Right? This is 2013, and I believe WannaCry happened in 2017. So it would never have happened. So you get the idea of what temporal predictive advantage is and the role AI plays in that. One thing you've got to be careful of, you'll hear others talk about how they implement AI. Be warned though, they would likely just be referencing an algorithm based on pattern recognition, such as those mentioned here. It could be just scans, it could be just heuristics, signatures, rules. I saw this picture before of this little boy on a bike riding into this area which said no bikes, and he's riding in it. He's broken the rules, and that's a little bit like how EDR thinks. It's happened. He's there. He's got his bike. Now a policeman has to go and tell him he's broken the rule and send him out, but it's already happened. Having a true AI-based solution allows you to prevent it. With it you can reallocate resources to help grow the business rather than burdening them with the reactive results of a cyber attack and like recovering systems and files through sifting through millions of events looking for indicators of that particular compromise, of whatever happened. And you can remove all of those what we call resource distractions, like on-premises infrastructure that you need to roll out the updates. You just don't need to worry about any of that. And plus it runs efficiently in the background. It's a very green solution to have. So this is how we do it. Our platform's built on AI/ML, and we've got a strong pedigree in endpoint protection and mobile security, and we've got that unique capability to prevent. And we have services. We work with our partners as well, like Solutions PT, to ensure that the message is passed across and everything is understood. Now, of these, today I'll be focusing a little bit on critical event management, which is one of our pillars. Now, the way we talk about mobile threat prevention is within the context of zero trust, which you must have heard of. It's a pillar of our pillars. It's driven by AI, which makes it unique. When we talk about zero trust, AI allows us to use things like behavioral analytics, constant monitoring, continuous authentication, and adaptive policy, which happens automatically. So regardless of where you are and who you are, what you're using, it will adapt. Policies will adapt automatically. And that gives you what we call zero touch experience for the end user. Great for admins because they don't have to keep going to their console to change policies. That's what AI helps deliver. So let's talk about one of those pillars, which is highly relevant to IEC 62443 and being prepared for cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. We call it CEM. So what is this process? What is this capability? What happens when you get hit by a cyber attack? And I wanted to give that example here. So to put it very simply, if you don't have a prevent first approach, such as using AI, or if it's a situation where you can't have an AI approach, for example, a fire breaks out, then you need a full remediation plan. And that includes a response that in seconds and maybe minutes allows you to assess the risk, mass communicate to all impacted parties and gather the status to ensure they're safe. It needs planning, management, and a system that can involve humans while assisting them and saving lives. So you can probably remember the Manchester bombing a couple of years ago. In the response, it was a very damning report that was produced that showed that the response was on average about 90 minutes. And what led to that was the fact that emergency services, the police, weren't talking to the ambulance service, they weren't talking to the fire department. There just wasn't any communication between them all. And taxis were ferrying people to hospitals. And a mass notification like this one could have helped that, that communication between emergency services. Could have done it within 30 seconds. And the response time, and communications could have been established between all the agencies within 90 seconds. So, it just goes to show that not just cyber attack, but also physical attacks can have their kind of impact on critical infrastructure. And then there are consequences to having critical events, right? These examples here: the loss of productivity, negative impact on morale, complaints, reputation, and revenue damage. Now, the revenue damage, the financial cost. Remember, I mentioned the cost of Colonial pipeline. They paid 4.4 million in ransom, but the operational cost was likely in the tens of millions. But there are, other things that causes these critical events, like act of God, Mother Nature, and man-made things like fires or bombs, whatever, and other critical incidents, whether there's political unrest. I'll go through one example in a minute. All organizations share a common goal, and that common goal is to keep the people safe and the operations up and running. And we're looking at financial impacts here, but it's a loss of property and life are just as even more devastating, and we can't really put the price on it, on the cost of lives here. So the mindset we all need to adopt is to think about how to prepare, prevent, and respond to critical attacks. Security needs to be watertight, and think of defense in depth. Make sure that the solution can scale and that communications can occur in seconds, and that's the key thing here. It needs to be coordinated between the organization and the emergency services, and it can occur on any endpoint. So I'm going to go through the next slide. So just to add more on that last point, if you're going to communicate and collaborate, you need to include a very diverse range of endpoints, not just smartphones, but also PBX phones, radio interfaces, smart displays, digital displays, televisions, pages, strobe lights, tannoy systems, and more, right? And these could get information from sensors, from fire alarms, from control systems, as well as your usual endpoints. And you want to make sure that this is, completely reliable. It's cloud and on-prem, whatever you need it to be. There's personnel accountability, so you know where people are, what they're doing, and are they safe, and you can account for that. So you need something that can actually take information from the field as well, and monitor what's going on and make sure that people are safe. Now here's an example. So here's an example of where CEM with Blackberry Attack actually allowed the US Capitol to be prepared, and it came to its own during the Capitol insurrection in January. Now they use our solution in the US Capitol. We call it government grade. This is the example of what government grade is. The solution was utilized extensively to coordinate communication and response efforts across multiple endpoints and modalities, right? So email, SMS, telephone, and desktop computers, as shown in this picture. You might have seen this picture already. It was shared by this guy, Elijah Schaefer. He's a reporter. I can't remember which newspaper he's from, but he was in the US Capitol with his camera. I remember him getting pushed by some of the demonstrators, but he actually sat on Nancy Pelosi's chair, took a picture of her desktop, and tweeted. And she'd seen the alert, and she'd scarf it just like everybody else. So that's why you saw hardly anybody there from the US Capitol building. They got their paperwork. They were going to be debating something very important that the protesters wanted to stop. They'd taken all the paperwork and everybody responsible out of the building well in time, and we're talking within a couple of minutes of knowing that they'd breached the barriers. And just imagine if they didn't have a solution like this, Nancy Pelosi could still be in that office along with all the others, and things could have been a lot worse. Another example, I remember when I mentioned risk in IEC 6443, think about water issues like drought, flooding, and contamination. They're public concerns as well as company concerns, and they pose real threats, real risks to communities, and especially to companies if there's an impact to water treatment plants, for example. CEM can be used to support an intelligent monitoring process that oversees the quality and levels throughout the year. You could have sensors and controls in the bodies of water measuring key variables such as the chemicals that are in there, water levels, and that data is fed back to a control room by alerts and can indicate whether a problem exists or is developing. And that information gets to the control room really quickly. Alerts are sent, whether it's public or to those concerned. And we're helping organizations be ready for climate change. So the events come in very, many shapes and sizes. I mean, this image kind of just summarizes, reflects the breadth and spectrum of the critical events that can affect all organizations. And our CEM approach manages that full life cycle of those types of events, from the notification to the mitigation, resolution, and the reporting, the documentation at the back of it, at the end of it. We've got two types. There's alert and there's ad hoc. You see in the middle there. Alert gives you just the notifications, and that's more kind of commercial, for commercial enterprises. Ad hoc is government. Utilities would kind of need the kind of government standard application, government standard version, but they've all got the unique characteristics. But fundamentally, their job is to respond and recover to critical events. And just to finish on CEM, this is from a recent study showing the improvement to organization resiliency with CEM. Organizations are 70% more likely to analyze and understand the impact of critical events in minutes or less. And there's a huge improvement to the resolution too, with the CEM solution in place. So that's critical event management. What I wanted to do was just finish off when this decides to change. Yeah, finish off with, what is Blackberry in industry for? What does it mean to us? And I wanted to look at it within the lens of what it means to utilities and energy, because I know it's deeply rooted in manufacturing. But, to me, what I know is, it's the convergence of cyber physical systems. You saw at the very beginning where Blackberry's seeing that kind of that convergence within IT, IoT, and OT. But we see that what's critical to that, what's key to that, and where Blackberry can really help people is data. We know that this data is very disparate, like Mazar said earlier on. It comes from all these sources, and all these different sources have to have that data go somewhere, and that somewhere is, in many cases, some people call it a data lake, and that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit. So this is the next phase of our cybersecurity evolution, and you'll hear about XDR in the market already. You'll hear about things like SIEM as well, which is like a poorer cousin brother of XDR. XDR goes deeper, and that's where AI comes in, because you need the deep learning to do this properly. It's basically an evolution of EDR and NDR, which is network detection response, and MDR, which is delivering that as a service. You get all these different sources, and it's to provide a tool set to ensure that you understand and secure that data and analyze it the way you need to. There's two ways to do it. There's a multi-vendor approach where you get multiple vendors to provide solutions. The problem here is that there's a lot of inter-vendor dependencies. There won't be a data lake, right? So that data is going to be all over the place. It will be a higher cost, and there will be multiple consoles. So cost of management will be very high. If you have a single vendor that does most, you can't have a single vendor that does everything, right? But if you have a single vendor that can at least consolidate the data into a data lake, then you'll be able to align tools better based on the sources of the data, depending on what it is. If it's from the network, is there a ZTNA product that allows you to do that? Is there an EDR product that allows you to do the analysis? Does AI give you a prevent first approach? And all these questions are answered by our platform, right? So we have the ZTNA for network. We have EDR. We got the prevent first, EPP. And, with a unified console, you can have unified workflows, right? And you don't have to send different commands to different sources of data. So you can analyze them all in one place. And we can partner with areas where we are not. We don't have in our platform. We don't have SIEM. So we've integrated with ServiceNow, for example, or CASB. We don't have a CASB solution. So we'll integrate with Zscaler. And for IAM, there are some cases where we need to integrate with other IAM, which is identity management solutions out there. Yesterday we announced at BBSS, we announced a partnership with Okta, right, which is one of the most widely used IAMs. So we're slowly building our XDR partnership capability while building on our platform as well. So this is great for companies that have that data and they want that telemetry from sensors, from wherever it needs to be, and be able to read it and analyze that data and prevent attacks. So just to finish off, revolutionize, stay ahead. There's a lot of changes out there. You are more than ready to prevent threats. Don't just patch things and wish things to be better. Build things from the ground up, and think about defense in depth. We talk a lot about resiliency, and that's definitely what this is. You've got to be resilient. I heard one of the water company CEOs mention that this morning. Resilience is absolutely important, as well as as being a key part of innovation going forwards. Understand where that Achilles heel is. If there's any gaps in your infrastructure, wherever they are, whether in IT or OT, find out where they are and make sure you fix it. And then look at the future. Look at what you're going to do with that data, right? And how are you going to build security into the core of what you do, right? So with that, I'd like to pass back to Tony, and hope that was useful. And yeah, over to you, Tony. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Baldeep. Yeah, it was really useful. I guess before I let you go, we have had a question come through. Somebody was asking, is the critical event management only applicable to IT?
No, in short, no. You can also extend CEM process to OT as well as IoT, and it uses IoT to actually kick those processes. So it's, I think the key part of the answer there to that question is to make sure that human and machine are actually in sync. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Baldeep. It's interesting that when I first looked at Blackberry Protect, the thing that excited me most was, from an OT perspective, it needed updating once, maybe twice a year, not once or twice a month. And for many of the OT companies, that was a massive reduction in overhead. But during our own testing, we actually saw the benefits that the Baldeep explained through the temporal predictive advantage. And we were picking up viruses way ahead of the traditional AVs that we've been used to. So not only is it easier to manage, it actually performs better. It's a lighter footprint. So it was really good to see that. And I guess the other thing that I found really interesting for anybody who works in cybersecurity in particular, but for a lot of projects, we all know that the balance between technology, process, and people is so important to be able to get it right. What I like, Baldeep, about your platform is you kind of bring all of those things into balance. So it's about introducing the right technology to support the processes, to make sure that people are involved, that they have got the information. It really does come together to produce a fantastic solution. So thank you very much for that. I guess the other thing is there's a lot of things we've spoken about today, from sort of Maz, first thing Lee, from Baldeep, and many of you may be on different parts of your cybersecurity journey. So we'd really like to talk to you about what might be the right next step for you. All the things that we've talked about today, all the things that we've seen, are actually modular. So it's a situation that you can build up over a period of time. What's going to give you the biggest benefit first? If you're more advanced on that journey, then how do you bring it all together? Or what are we doing with other customers or companies in your industry that might be able to help you to achieve the goals that you want to achieve? So before I go, I just want to say a big thank you to Maz, Lee, Baldeep for your thoughts, your inspiration, your sharing your knowledge today. It's been really useful. I've learned a lot, and hopefully people who've joined the webinar have as well. We will be reaching out after the webinar. We'd love feedback, but if there are things that you would like to ask us, then please reach out. I'm going to share a screen just as we finish the webinar that will just have our details on. So do feel free to get in touch with us. We'll send some details out. The webinar will be available as a recording. That'll probably be within the next 72 hours, and we'll email you and let you know when that's available. But thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you to our presenters, and hopefully it's given some ideas on how you too can stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.